Good afternoon. Um, I know people will be texting me because there's something about the juju right now on I almost said on Facebook, but I'd like to welcome you to the Monday Native Wellness broadcast, and I'm actually just going to there. That looks better to me. So, okay, Nataniko Aste Nikki. My name is Lori Newbreast, and I'm coming to you live from the Blackfeet Reservation today on behalf of Native Wellness Institute. And I was thinking, I had just listened this morning to another broadcast of people, they're in all parts of the world. And so that always amazes me. You know, some people stay up really late and they look like they've been staying up late. And then some people, must set an alarm and they kind of look sleepy. And but whatever corner of the world you are coming to today, I just want to greet you. I'm happy you're here and that we are going to make this connection over the next hour. And if you hear the notification from my phone, it's because sometimes I live in an area that um, right now there's not a lot of people. And for my community, we are being mindful of the time we live in. So we are at a stay at home order and we're just living our lives, staying safe, taking care of each other. And so today, when I was thinking about what I would share with you, I've had this discussion over the last, I would say, off and on with people. Some friends are more comfortable talking about it. Other friends don't want to. There's a lot of uh, discussion around when people make their transition from this world to, to the land of the Creator, to back with the Creator and the ancestors. So we're going to talk about, or I am, and hopefully you'll comment. Talk about what it's like when we're in this time now where we're mindful of the journey the last 500 years that our people have went through. For some of us, for my people, it's it feels like 5,000 years some days, but some days it's like a minute in our culture that we've lived and learned to live with disruption. And there are some on the calendar that rules our lives that usually is not the calendar that um, the people of this land went by. And for my people, that's true also. So this calendar was imposed on us, and then it followed other things that were imposed on us in our life cycle and in our way of being, because you have many hoops in your life or many cycles in your life that you go through. And in wellness, which is a new term, right? That's a new English word. You know, that concept is that it's an active state of always trying, not trying, but a being where you make those, intellectual decisions, you make those physical decisions, those emotional decisions, um, and those spiritual decisions about how you are going to maintain. How are you going to walk through wellness in the moments that you're living now? And we're all familiar with, how we all got here, hopefully. If not, then we got to do a lot of education. Got to bring that Nona Main back on from Fort Belknap. But we were all created and came to Earth somehow. And there's like I think there's such diversity, and it's like a magical storytelling when people start, from many nations, start sharing their creation stories. about where they come from, how they're connected to, the universe, how they're connected to the creator, how they're connected to each other, how they're born into a certain band, how they're born into a certain family. Um, and now, for my people in my lifetime, we were born in a certain geography, many of us that had, the privilege to be born in our homeland. And so, in that sense, for my people, we're fortunate. We're in our traditional territory, but we also like to travel. Generations, there's historic stories of people traveling. So somehow we all came from somewhere. Came from our mother, came from our father. Really, people say came from the mother, but it's also you come from the mother and father through a joining together of their physical selves, and that spark of life is given to you. And there's a lot of stories in every culture uh, about how you make that transition here to the earth time. And they usually don't involve just staying on, well, for some people, many of the stories do not involve just staying on this planet or not having relationships with not just the sun, but also the stars, right? Stars are out in sunlight. It's just that our eyes, the way we're made, we can't see them. But they're up there shining right now, the constellations, and night makes them visible. So there's all sorts of hoops, a hoop of a day, in a moment, an experience. And so I wanted to talk about sort of like you come here, your birth, you're given a name, you belong to a family, you belong to a community. And in there are, um, I would say, blessings that are given to you in the name, in the community you're born into. That's like your privilege of who you are and like your role in life. And as you move through your life, there are other passages. Maybe when you first walk, people will have stories. When you first talk, when you do something significant, and some people call those rites of passage. But there's passages in each day. How you wake up in the morning, how you greet the day, how you prepare for the day. How your intentions of your goals, setting goals for that day. I've started to keep a list, because otherwise I get out of control about the things I think I could achieve in 24 hours. So I have like little mini goals, and those are passages. Those are a way for me to right now handle all the information that's coming in, the experiences that all my people are going through, my own family, um, our community. And then I don't know if this is my cousin or, my new digital cousin or something, but you get a lot of information off this. It's like that one cousin that, they know everything. And in my when one of my uncles, who's now in the spirit world, but when he was on this planet, if you wanted to know anywhere, if let's say you were in, I don't know, Antarctica, and you got one call home, and you wanted to know everything that was going on with who and who's up and who's doing this and who did that, who didn't do that, you could call him, because we had those living, if you want to say, those living people making archives of our community. One of my friends had an aunt who, before, now people snap, post, comment, share, you get messages, We even had people saying, if I see somebody breaking the quarantine or the stay-at-home order, I'm gonna photograph them if they're in Walmart. And but in the past, we always had ways to mark the activity of our time through story, through people paying attention and caring about everybody. And as disruption came to us, that role of those people began to get, they reacted to the oppression, to the forms of lateral violence, external violence at first, lateral violence. And then, now we have a strange kind of thing happening. And so feel free to write a paper on this if that's your gig. Is there's like a lateral, not just violence, but a lateral hierarchy, a cultural, like colonization sometimes when we're all meeting as people, and where there is an attempt to create a hierarchy among the nations. And that is part of disruption, because if you had come from a nation on this hemisphere that has 29 people, you are equal to, like, let's say my people, that we have probably, depending on how people count our numbers, we have people over 20,000 on this side of the US. And people will dispute that. But there was an equity that was a part of our way of life, where we did not say and create a hierarchy of like who was the super indigenous person or super cultural person. And so in looking at the hoop we're all living in, and that wellness is the way that we're going to negotiate forward as people, how we're going to survive the pandemic, how we're going to move together in this next period, this next hoop we're going to live in through the winter, how we're going to move together collectively, being mindful of every community. And I was listening to an international broadcast, and they were talking about access to some of the things that in this hoop of experience for us would help and safeguard our communities. And I was like, that seems like we're coming full circle, because really, I think since we had first contact, it's always about access to the tools we need to go through this period where our cultures have been disrupted, and ourselves, because people are the culture. So in this medium, there was information about how in one country that, their people were just running wild, acting like nothing changed, and now they are changing. But they said something, and I was like, one of those moments when you hear something, you kind of go like this, make sure that it didn't have waxy ears or anything. And in that country, they said that 50% of the households only had one person. So in Indian country, I mean, in my household, I look at every being. So I got 3 res dogs and me. But I was saying 50%, I got stuck on that, right? And I was like, oh, I'm going to pray for those people that are 50%, because that seems like if that's the norm of a country, to live by yourself, or people start being by themselves, to me, that was just, sometimes, yeah, you need a res break, from all the chatter and stuff, but that seems like a strange place that I hope my prayer is our cultures don't go to. because the people need connection. And right now, the innovation that I've seen using this medium for our people to have connection, to stay in contact. It's like like in my grandparents' time, or even when I lived away from the reservation as a child, I'd still write my grandma a letter. It's like those threads of connection that the letter may say, oh, it was sunny today, we didn't have to go to school, which for me was always like a holiday. Um, Although you should go to school. So those threads of connection really are what make up your hoop of life in this experience. And so I was thinking about how using English, like how during this time we have together, I was thinking about the first breath on earth was taken by someone other than a human, because there was already water here, there was already earth, there was already soil, and those elements are living and they breathe. So I was thinking about that hoop when we came in as human beings and we started mapping out our way of life and getting help from from the spiritual world, from the creator, from all the sacred things that have been gifted to our cultures. We had to figure out and move through those ways and leave behavior beside the path in order to go forward and in a good way. But really, that is, if you Google wellness, you'll see conferences, you'll see people charging, they starting to specialize, professionalize, certified, standardized, licensed, kind of those people count, right, and charge for wellness. And I'm like, that's your life. You shouldn't be charged for your own life. Your own life doesn't have a dollar component on it. And so taking how, the privileges that I've had to have teachings, to hear stories, to my own life experiences that I've been gifted, really, we're in a time where we're embracing and taking responsibility for our communities during the pandemic. I have not heard of one Native community or one Indigenous community, that's like the new word since the 40s, that has not taken more responsibility for their communities. And they've seen the growth in some of the efforts that they were working on prior to the pandemic to ensure wellness, to keep their people alive, to do when people are in quarantine or in isolation, to support them in a safe way. And when I was listening to this international broadcast, as getting ready and I was doing all sorts of things this morning, they said that's one of the goals of controlling the pandemic is supportive quarantine or supportive isolation when somebody has been tested positive. That's like they're still promoting on a global level this what they consider stellar behavior, that you support somebody. And so everything they'd say, I'd say, oh yeah, we're doing that up here, on the Blackfeet Reservation, the council, the whole community, all our allies. We got that one. Yeah, we got that one. Yeah, we got that one. But they were announcing that as a goal. And what I can say that I have bared witness to in all the communities of the Confederacy, there's a mobilization, including mine, that when that person needs support, they're getting whatever we have. And that includes food and you know, things that you need to run your household. And so they're, in a way, that generosity, that principle of generosity, that is like holds communities together. It has adapted. So what I can say is I heard this international body saying that they still wanted that to be a goal, and we're living it. And you know, like, you know, and then Indians, all you have to say, you know, that they're going to give out something, you know, and you know, our networking starts buzzing. So last night I was calling people late, telling them you get on that delivery for the COVID-19 turkey dinner, you know, call now, you know, get your physical address. And depending on what reservation you live on, like our physical address, you know, it could be, you know, that one gravel road where after you travel over that one icy bridge, you go right. So that was before 9/11, and then after 9/11, September 11th, um, then we were able, or somebody wanted to give us all addresses, but there was like the historical community knowledge base address, and then there was the other jurisdictions that, you know, on a map they like to govern us, you know, the states, the counties, you know, and then there was the one where we negotiated where you could name where you live. So um, when they say give your physical address, you know, sometimes I just want to put here. That's my physical address is right here. But maybe that goes under that, you know, that new category of something else, right? So in this hoop that we're living in part of this vibrant, you know, eclectic uh, period we're in, we're also saying, how do we stay well? How do, if you are, you know, a warrior, a sobriety warrior, or warette, or you know, I don't know, a chief of sobriety of any kind, you know, during this time, it's moved, like a lot of people have moved online, and so there's ways people are figuring out during this time how I could still practice my wellness. And I have witnessed people doing extraordinary things in adapting. And I've adapted a lot of things I do. And one of the really gifts that I count during this pandemic is, prior to this, a lot of the way I supported myself with the necessity of money is I traveled. I sacrificed being connected to home. I have now had the privilege of being at home through this period where I didn't have to go out and, you know, become, if you want to say, like an economic refugee, you know, that. And so this medium has changed my life. And that I would consider a passage in my life, to adapt to this medium, to begin to say, during this wellness time, when I've made concrete, real physical world commitments to my family and to my community, do the best I can to help during this time by doing my part. And also, you know, I was also mindful when I was listening to that international body that I don't want them to forget about Indigenous people and access to resources. So I'd just like to share some of the things I do, because that's not my job, but I'm a human being, and I'm Niswitipi, I'm Spalpikaniaki. I take that on to live my life. to do my part, use my skills that were adaptive from past times to contribute to the good of now. So I get on those international bodies broadcasts, and I'm in the chat box, and I'm giving reports from the Blackfeet Reservation saying what we need, access to care. I'm doing right now a search where I could like maybe find some emails to those greater resources that will be available soon here. And I'm going to ask I'm going to take privilege, but I'm also going to ask your patience that I have to let my dog off the lead, or she will do the rest of the power hour. Just 1 second. No. Thank you. She's 67 pounds full of vibrant energy. And then I got another res dog on my lap. So thank you. But when I was listening to that, and I thought, I'm going to do this because it matters that we participate as things have changed for us in the last couple weeks here. It matters that we stay in contact with the powers that be, even if that was our previous way we made our livelihood and we no longer are paid for that. So if you got a skill to help your community and to be visible in whatever venues you operate in, take that opportunity. Even if you just say, hi, I'm here from this community, or, I'm a member of this nation. Because our visibility right now is, I think it's like when, when a flower first comes up in the springtime, and where a frost or you're hoping that we always watch when we start seeing the blossoms. We always are praying, we're mindful of the weather because we don't want that blossom to be taken out, because that means you won't get a berry that year or as many. And really, I have witnessed in my life the use of this medium, the social platforms, the Zooming, the Webinex, whatever your bowl of cereal is in staying connected, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I have seen a connection and networking strategy figured out between people that I'm in groups with, that we nobody's funding us, but we paid our internet bill so we can advocate, we can organize. And you just heard my little one. Sorry, she got a little aggravated. So I'll talk over. Oh, there's my dog's tail. They're gonna have their moment. I'm gonna let them have their moment. She may calm down, otherwise I'll have to take care of her. And this is one of the good things too, although sometimes they're not under contract or anything, so they don't necessarily have to fulfill performance on the power hour. They just themselves. So but when I was listening to that broadcast about like the coming months, maybe people envision that this time would be different, but the coming months in the winter, during the winter time, is also a very active time, because you're preparing for that green grass, you're preparing for this change of seasons, you're preparing for all the things that you're going to live in the future and you're going to participate in. And when I was preparing for today, I write myself notes, and I want to be mindful and talk about when my community, our tribal council, last week they had a memorial for all the members we had lost to COVID-19, or that had made their journey. And to see, for me, that was a real turning point, because we're going to have more passages. And for so much of the history of disruption or historical trauma, whatever phrase you want to use, is one of the things that was actively taken away by law, by treatment, by restrictions, by colonization, was how we took care of our people at the end of their life. And now we're in a time of adaptation, where the parts where we are beginning to integrate more and more our culture into the way that we could legally take care of our people at the end of their life. There was widespread movements of people changing that, how that person was honored, how their physical body was taken care of. And now we're in another transition of how we mark those passages. And it reminds me of some of the stories that once they, for my people, once they put the US-Canadian border political line across, that there were many times when the only time that we would find out when people passed is if somebody, was able to make those long physical journeys between our communities. Where in the past, the way we stayed in contact was through travelers, that was their role. Their role was to go and carry information, to keep up that connection during all times between our communities and report. Just like my uncle and my friend's aunt, there were people they collected the day-to-day histories of people, of the events that made up their lives. And during this time, we're also coming upon a way of transitioning. When we lose people, or when COVID-19, affects our people and they make their transition, their life on here, their living body ends. What did they do? Where did they go? And the way we came together has changed and is going to continue to evolve. So during this time, I felt a need to look at that time, to say how we put people and send them mark their spiritual passage from the living generation in the past. Like when my ancestors, my great-great-grandparents lived here, it was different. But what are those things that we marked their passage with? It's with the stories. It's with the tales of how they were able to, in their life, have passages of achievement, how they came out of hardship, how they went on to maybe after they grew up, from childhood, how they started a family, how they worked on behalf of the tribe, how they served the nation, how they held, our ceremonies through the hard times, and what was their role. That's how we marked people. We honored them, because every life is equally magnificent. And so one thing that I've learned from my own life experience is that when you hear that somebody's made that transition, the prayers of love start. The prayers of honoring, of praying for that family, of praying for the communities they came from, praying for yourself, because now that person isn't part of the living generation, but you still have you still have that connection. And sometimes I use this word because in the English word, and if I say it, everybody knows. So during these times, because we're dealing with the healing from historical trauma, the disruption that caused in our community, and as cultures, the ways that we were then prohibited to make our ceremonies, to collectively come during the spiritual transition time of one of our family members, to send them on in their way, to take care of ourselves. Our way of, once we, as their witness to on their spiritual transition, when they leave the living generation, us as human beings, when we remain as part of the living generation, our people took care of themselves. They marked, for my people, they marked in a very specific way, so that it doesn't mean that it prevented the grieving. It didn't mean that you don't remember that person or talk about them, because you are them. You carry your ancestors' face no matter where you go. You carry the DNA of your mother and your father and all the ancestors that made them. You are that living carrier of the ancestors. But we had an intentional marking after you took care of that person's physical body and that time ended. Then there was markings of what you did after that. And I really think this is a time when we show compassion to ourselves, wherever you're at, that we're in that re-emerging. We're like that, we're like that delicate berry blossom in the spring. We are on that wellness path to re-emerge, to go to the phase of where we're going to, like the blossom, you transition to a berry that feeds the people. And that is your offering in gatherings. And as one of the people during this time, I think we have to have great compassion for ourselves and for others. And, I had a conversation, and this is kind of like what was my messaging in that conversation is, nobody's doing the pandemic perfect. And as far as I know, there may be a few people on the planet that were alive in 1920. But for me, this is my first pandemic. So I do what I can. And I take those tools from before and the pieces of knowledge, and I work towards surviving this. I told myself when I was coming home in the beginning of March, I'm going to make this through. I don't know how. When you find out that every way you were going to make your money is ended, I said, I don't know how, but I am going to do it. I'm going to use all I can. And one of our Picanny artists, John Peppian, always says in his post, keep on pushing. And I would like to add that, keep on pulling together. Keep on, if there's a connection it's kind of like a stray thread. Instead of picking it and throwing it farther away, maybe pick it and put it together till you have a ball of connections with people, of new groups that you're a part of through social media. Just going on. I pace myself But when I go on Facebook or any of the other platforms and people announce that, their family member is sick and they're asking for support, be that wellness supporter and acknowledge them. Minding your wellness, but acknowledge. And sometimes I take a break. I pull back from this because it it's part of how I have to maintain balance. So it's okay to have a rhythm in this hoop. It's okay to have a rhythm where you figure out what's working for you. And um, as people gather during this time when they lose a family member and they start talking about what really mattered during this time, is that what brings people together is that love, that creation that brought us all here as a living generation. We were made in love. The Creator loves all of us. And to mark passages during this time, like there's birthdays, right? That's the hoop of life, right? You are created. The Creator gives you that spark of life. Your parents carried that creation, and you arrive on earth. You live your life. You go through your passages, whatever that may mean, and you come to that spiritual transition. One time when I was working and living up in Ontario, Canada, one of the clan mothers from the Haudenosaunee, Sadie Buck, we were having this conversation, and she told me, the only thing you do, like when there's a passage of somebody, their life on in the living generation is transitioning to the spirit world, you go there and you honor them. You honor them first. And I had thought about that a lot. And if you hear a little snore, it's my dog. And in my own the passage of my father, the loss of my aunts and uncles, my other relatives, my cousins, my friends, I also got another piece of advice where an encouragement to help turn my focus back to the living generation. It's been a year since one of my main touchstones of life, that she's in the spirit world now. But when I lost my father, she called me up, because she lives in Canada, and she called me up, and this is what she told me, that her father had been gone for over 29 years, and she missed him every day. But she was one of the most fun-loving, flashy dressing. She was just like somebody that you just like to squeeze and be around. And she had a distinctive laugh, and she was always, no matter what the circumstance, there was always something fun with her. And I really took that to heart as encouragement, that yes, I also had advice from my father. He told me that he didn't want his death, his passage, to be about the rest of my life. He said, you can't build your life around that. And then he had a sense of humor. He also told me, don't be hanging around the boneyard, which is what he called the graveyard. And then another thing I was told at that time is, you must make friends your whole life. And so being connected during this time, I think it's part of being on a wellness journey. The need to connect to honor those connections that you carry through this time, to welcome new people into your circle by whatever safe means you have, through the internet, through the telephone. And one thing I learned from my mom, she's always, when she goes to the post office, she's always really excited because she gets letters. She got a letter from one of our friends that lives overseas, and she had sent him a package at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was returned in the summertime because, they would not let our stuff into their country. So she received a letter, and she writes a lot of letters. And so two of my little nephews that live far away from me, I told them I was going to write them a letter, and they had to write me a letter first. And then I realized they've never written a letter in their life. They've never, right? So if you're of that generation, you've never, written a letter, put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and sent it to somebody. And usually people got down to postcards. Oh, I'm having a great time, and they'd send you a postcard. If you have to send a postcard. So it's okay to try new ways of connecting with people. And some of those new ways are old ways, because you're sending that little message to somebody in a tactical, physical way that, they can hold on to it during this time. And one of the techniques in workshops before this time, when everybody could get together, you had per diem, you had snacks, and you had fun, t-shirts, giveaways, dope rides, stuff like that, there was a technique of introducing where people would write letters to themselves, and then the trainer would take them and then mail them off later. And then they would get this letter from themselves reminding them of encouraging words. So I just want to give you full permission, to write yourself a letter of encouragement during this time, of appreciation, of wellness, of gratitude, and maybe a letter of the things you would like to leave behind. Maybe there was some wellness barrier or challenge that was in your life before. It's okay to leave things behind now. And when we're going through this as a living generation, this particular experience, people are still going through their lives. They're addressing challenges, they're having celebrations, they're having achievements. And during this time, because the sun, we spend more time under the stars, if you want to think about it like that. And a lot of people miss that light, and they long for it, and they mourn that light. I encourage you in the nighttime to look up at the sky, because there are wellness stories, there are ways of being that are told through the shift of the night sky when the sun is giving us that grace of the night. And for people that during this time it has become maybe like a struggle to get through, there are things you can do to help yourself. Make sure, even if it's a cloudy day, that you go outside, if it's safe. Because I also recognize that some people that live in densely populated areas, a walk around the block may be a high risk for them. But find a place where the sun can shine on you, or the light from the day can be a part of what you're doing. And up here, because we are the type of severe winter weather we have, sometimes all you can show the sun is this. Everything. And sometimes not even that, sometimes like this. because you don't want to freeze your face. But to venture outside is critical during this time to have, uh, to get that physical wellness balance. And then I would also, my family, we have, it's just how we communicate also. Is when we touch bases by phone or something significant happens to somebody far away, we talk about our dreams. We talk about that nighttime, what that nighttime was like. This is how it was for me to go to sleep. This was how, the dream I had. This is how it made me feel. This is what I think it feels, or what I think it means. And so there's a lot of activity in the nighttime. And so if that passage into sleep during this time is a little rocky, maybe, you know, maybe start a time where you are preparing in a more intentional way to meet that sleep time. And I'm going to, I heard a little ding, just make sure that somebody, my cousin, it's like that one cousin, you'll be doing something all serious and then they just burst in the room and say, hey, got anything to eat? That's how the phone is sometimes. Or I had this one relative when they would come and visit at Thanksgiving, when they were leaving, if they were going to take any part of the turkey, one time they just took the turkey leg and put it in their pocket for later. So, that's how the phone is like, right? It's like cousin, you love them, but So, but during this time, if preparing for sleep, the thing I like about Sister Google is you could like put in there ways to get to sleep, like drug-free ways to get to sleep, and then a bunch of techniques are going to come up. And on one, when I was Zooming in one group, I shared that the way I can go to sleep is, but it's taken a lot of years, is I take breaths and count backwards from 10. But you find out what works for you, because during this time, the passage of sleep to end your day is critical. You must sleep. You must rest. And for the type of lifestyles that everybody was living, regardless of where you were, that were physically, there was so much movement. We've been asked to come and sit, to come and be in maybe our households with our families. And then some people I know have got, they were caught through their choices. They're caught in another country. So that is their passage. That will be their story of how they moved through this time. What it was like to be away from your family of origin, or your family of choice, and what it was like to be away from home during the pandemic. So today, as we share this time together, really wellness, there's all sorts of ways to express it. There is, and to get back on track. Maybe you fell off, or maybe you said you were going to stop online shopping, and it's gotten a little out of control. It's just like, you can always pull the reins back. You can always get back on that track. And I think for the Native Wellness Institute, that there's a lot of support now. If you find that you are up late at night, or maybe you're looking for that support for your wellness, you can come back on here. You can rewatch all I don't know the exact number, but it's like over 215 or something power hours. And you could go on the YouTube page, you can look for that. You could subscribe to positivity groups, to wellbriety groups. and form your own little connection of how you are going to feel supported in this journey. And I feel like I can't say this enough, even to myself. Like when I'm having moments of you know, hardship during this time, I always tell myself, this is my self-talk. I belong to the Creator, and I am never alone. I repeat that to myself. I belong to the Creator, and I am never alone. Because really, like in Indian country, like how, news can travel so fast, the truth and otherwise can travel so fast. It's because their connections are so strong, and that discussions and ways of being that our ancestors carried forward for us to strengthen us during this time, those teachings, those ways of being are so critical to acknowledging, and I'm really grateful for those. And when I was preparing for today, how I'd like to conclude this hoop of the Power Hour is that I want to express to you that gratitude for this connection, for us being together, but also to wish you well in whatever you're going to do in the rest of your day. And my dog, as she's snoring on my lap, that's what she's wishing you too. You can learn a lot from her as dog. Sometimes they're resting and they got one ear up, just in case they have to hop to it, or there may be an opportunity to go ride in a car. That's my one dog. Or they feel so comforted and loved and safe that they sleep and they snore. So whatever way you can find comfort and safety today that supports your wellness, and maybe you need a belly laugh, so you look at or you Google something funny, you read something funny, you could say funny quotes in the Google, or you call up that one cousin or friend that knows a lot of jokes and is always laughing about things. And laughter is really laughter when it's shared. So have a giggle today, some way along the way, as you make your passage through this hoop of this day. Have a laugh. And I wish you well, and I love you all. And remember, we're all in this together, and you're never alone. So have a good afternoon. Thank you for joining Native Wellness Power Hour. Bye-bye.